Hello, my babies. Welcome to the third session of whatever it is I'm trying to do. Yeah, effectively, what I'm trying to do is read the whole BABOK book for business analysis. BABOK stands for Business Analysis Book of Knowledge. Yes. And we're at chapter 3, Business Analysis, Planning, and Monitoring. Get excited, bro. Get excited. Energy, energy. The business analysis planning and monitoring knowledge area task organizes. Does that work for you guys? Let's go to this. All right, perfect. Business analysis planning and monitoring knowledge area takes and area tasks organize and coordinate the efforts of business analysts and stakeholders. All right, so this is basically where we learn about planning and monitoring. So any project you have to kind of like look forward into something into the future, prepare for it, see what results you have, and basically go over it over and over again. These tasks produce outputs that are used as key guidelines for the other tasks throughout the BABOK guide. The business analysis, planning, and monitoring knowledge area includes the following tasks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5. Amazing. Task number 1, plan business analysis approach. That makes sense, right? What the fuck are you going to be doing? This is what we're going to be doing, planning the approach. Describes the planning of business analysis work from creation of or selection of a methodology to planning the individual activities, tasks, and deliverables. Task number 2, task number 2, plan stakeholder engagement. Describes understanding which stakeholders are relevant to the change and what business analysts need from them and what they need from business analysts and the best way to collaborate. So even how you talk to people is going to be planned. Amazing, because you could only grow in what you measure. So preparing for these things leads to expectations, and basically based on your expectations, you cannot hold your expectations close to heart. You need to throw them out there in order to get something to compare to. So planning, basically all plans change, but the idea of a plan is to create a certain structure that we can use as reference. So plan business analysis governance defines the components of business analysis that are used to support the governance function of the organization. It helps ensure that decisions are made properly and consistently and follows a process that ensures decision makers have the information they need. Examples of this include requirements management, business analysis, risk management, and allocation of business analysis resources. So we actually did that in I think episode 2, where we're discussing the base that we would always kind of reference for the future, especially since we have to kind of outline which strategies we might be using when it comes to the business and to what we're going to analyze, because some strategies would work with finance but won't work with logistics, or some strategies would work with economies, bigger economies, but won't work with or basically market structures, but would not work with corporate structures. So this basically, the governance is basically I don't want to say law, but I want to say the rules that we could approach the project with. Let's use that for now. Plan business analysis information management. Oh, I just remembered. There was something about the knowledge book of knowledge or something like that, which we basically have to create. And I thought about it the other day and I was like, I would want to understand it better, but I'm sure it's going to come into the future. So let's see how that goes, and we take everything with a grain of salt. Remember, I'm just reading the book and out loud thinking about it. So plan business analysis information management. That's probably it. Defines how information developed by business analysts, including requirements and designs, is captured, stored, and integrated with the information for long-term use. Amazeballs. Identify business analysis performance improvements. Describes managing and monitoring how business analysts' work is performed. So basically, it manages our own performance. So task number 1 is basically the approach we're going to have on us basically creating a certain structure for considering it. Engagements, task number 2 is basically the engagement that we would actually want, how we're going to engage with people. There's some people you have to be decisive with, and some people you have to negotiate, and some people you kind of have to wipe their butts clean and be like, I did my job. Look at me. I'm a good business analyst. Number 3, planning the governance, which is basically the law. I don't want to say laws, man, but it's basically the points that we have to adhere to as we're coming back and forth and we're engaging with whatever it is we're engaging. Plan business analysis, information management, as in like how's the information going to go, where is it distributed, where is it stored, integrated with other information long-term use. And at the end of the day, the analysis performance improvements, as in for us, how we can improve in our business analysis because we actually can like iterate on top of our own mistakes while operating this project and save time. And saving time means money and means stress, less stress, funding, stress, communication, better communication. It's just like a whole lot of stuff that you could actually like win if you reflect on yourself. This is a key life approach because it's always look at yourself and how you're doing things. And again, like if you're measuring something, then you'll be able to actually interact with it. Now, the core concept model in business analysis, planning and monitoring. Was that task number one? No. Okay. The business analysis core concept model, BACCM. Wow. More acronyms. Yay. Describes the relationships among the six core concepts. One, two, three, four, five. These are five. The six core concepts were here, right? What are the six core concepts? Come on. These are the core concepts. Remember, change. What do we have to change? Or what is going to change? What's the need? What's the solution? Who are the stakeholders? What's the value? And what is the context of all of this? Amazeballs. So, managing the six core column, they're written here. Why did I go up? It's fun. I went up because I remembered we mentioned them, and I went back up in order for me to get a refresher. So going back down right now, these are more affixed in my head because I put effort actually to go check for something. Some might say you could have just like been patient and moved forward, but like establishing what you know or what you're familiar with before you take a step strengthens the step and again gives you something to reflect on. So the core concept model in business analysis and planning and monitoring. All right, so I don't know what we're doing right now that we didn't do earlier, but let's see. The core concept change, the active transformation in response to a need. Doing business analysis, planning, and monitoring and monitoring business analysis. So basically, these are responsible for determining how changes to business. I think this is basically the same explanation, but directly pertaining to business analysts instead of pertaining to the business. So the active transformation in response to a need, which is change, are responsible for determining how changes to business analysis results will be requested and authorized. Okay, so it's how we structure. Remember, yeah, so this book is for us, and every business has its own use case. So great. Need, a problem or opportunity to be addressed. Choose a business analysis approach that provides adequate analysis for the change. Solution, during business analysis, planning, and monitoring. Within planning and monitoring, every one of these concepts basically is represented this way. Solution, a specific way of satisfying one or more needs in a context. Evaluate if business analysis performance was a key contributor to the successful implementation of a solution. So, yeah, so business analysts here basically analyzing their own performance. Stakeholder, a group of individuals with a relationship to change, we need the need or the solution. Perform a stakeholder analysis to ensure planning and monitoring activities reflect stakeholder needs, blah, 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 and account for stakeholder characteristics. Read every word, even though it might actually be just a passing thing that you might be repeated 50 times, but at the very least, uh, Bruce Lee once said, "Fear not a man that actually practiced 1,000 kicks, but practiced one kick 1,000 times." So every single time you go over something, even though you've gone over it before, it just becomes a lot more in your head. The worth, importance of usefulness or something to a stakeholder within a context. Conduct performance analysis to ensure business analysis activities continue to produce sufficient value for the stakeholders. So ultimately, like, what are the performance analysis key points that we have to actually like focus on in order for us to create more value? Context, which is the circumstances that are influenced by and provide understanding of the change. Ensure a complete understanding of the context under analysis in order to develop an efficient business analysis approach. So they're practically saying like each one of these requires our attention because ultimately they're going to be defining our approach. And that's how we're going to be planning based on these core concepts. Got a chart! Oh my fucking god, this is amazing. Business analysis, planning, and monitoring input-output diagram. Input, needs, performance objectives. The performance objectives are external. Why would they consider them external? How would the performance impact, which goes out? I have no idea. Tasks. 3.1, plan business analysis approach. These are the 5 tasks that we did before. Plan stakeholder engagement, plan business analysis governance. And then after that, we get an output, business analysis approach, stakeholder engagement approach, governance approach. Basically, like the tasks are to plan this shit and then we create an approach. That's the output. Performance assessment, business analysis, performance assessment, information management approach. Great. So plan business analysis approach, 3.1, which is this one here, the planning stage of business analysis approach. I feel we're going to go through every single one of those in detail in this chapter. Amazing. Plan business analysis approach. Purpose. The purpose of plan business analysis approach is to define an appropriate method of conduct business analysis activities. That's exactly what we had earlier, right? My cat was being, I don't know, she was being extra curious. Come back. Description. Where they're describing now the plant business analysis approach and what it talks about. Business analysis approaches describe the overall method that will be followed when performing business analysis work on a given initiative and how, when tasks will be performed and the deliverables that will be produced. I really hope you guys are hearing me. Yes, you are. All right. Business analyst may also identify an initial set of techniques to use. Get it? This is part of the planning. The list may change as the initiative proceeds. Changing is basically based on the iteration, and the business analyst gains a deeper understanding of the change and its stakeholders. Because there are 5 tasks and they are all related. Remember, even the core, my God, even the core concepts are all related. Every single time a single concept changes a bit, we have to see how it impacts everything else. The business analysis approach may be defined by a methodology or by organizational standards. In some organizations, elements of the business analysis approach may be standardized and formalized into repeatable business analysis process, which can be leveraged for each effort. Ultimately, like it could create a standard for how business does things, because ultimately our existence should only exist to create something new and then we fuck off. But if we always have to come and sustain it, then we didn't really do a good job from the beginning, which can be leveraged for each effort. Even when a standard approach exists and may be tailored to the needs of a specific initiative. Tailoring may be governed by standards that define which approaches are permitted, which elements of those processes may be tailored, the general guidelines and selecting process. So basically, even when you create something and that seems to work, you kind of have to also like dive deeper into how the other people on the other side might use it and to kind of like change it. Here they use the word tailor it to the specific initiative and basically creating standards for it. So at the very least, it's clear cut communication, babies. Communication, express yourself. By the way, like I recently realized, well, recently, like 3 years ago, realized that even though we can read, it doesn't necessarily mean we're understanding what we're reading. So the idea behind like documentation is to explain stuff, but a lot of people don't really read in a way that allows them to kind of like absorb from whatever it is they're reading because they're kind of used to reading crap, maybe. So these kinds of things as well are very important to consider because most of the people that ask for your help are not really like they could have figured it out or they could have like read enough until they got to where you are. Let's just say initiative is very important. So if organizational standards do not exist, the business analyst works with appropriate stakeholders to determine how the work will be completed. For example, if the change is delivered via a project, the standards will approach may be developed during the project planning phase. The business analysis approach should align to the overall goals of the change, coordinate the business analysis tasks with the activities and deliverables of the overall change, include tasks. See these ones where, for example, like I was just talking about reading. I was reading them and I was thinking about something else. So let's go back. The business analysis approach should align to the overall goals of the change. Naturally. Why? Because What's the point of this task? To do that. That's where we want to reach? Yes. So this task makes sense. Wow. Coordinate the business analysis task with the activities and deliverables of the overall change. Basically link them together in a way that actually like creates a bit more harmony or at the very least efficiency and effectiveness in our operations, in how we operate towards our goals. Include tasks that manage any risks that could reduce the quality of business analysis deliverables or impede task efficiency. So there you need to include tasks that manage risks. So there has to be tasks that do stuff and tasks that manage other stuff that might actually stand in the way of what we're doing. Amazing. And then finally, leverage approaches and select techniques and tools that have historically worked well. That's based on your research and stuff like that. You kind of realize that these are things that worked in the past, or these are things that worked in this context, or in this situation, or with such company. You got to decide, bro. Because who's the business analyst? You are. Look at you. I completely like, listen, this is how I feel, man. I feel this is all just if you put somebody somewhere and tell him you have to figure this out. If all they do is spend time on it, then they'll figure it out. But I feel that's the more we articulate. So here's a story. There's a story that about Thoth, the Egyptian god, and he goes to the other gods and goes, I decided to teach man how to write. And all the gods were disappointed because writing kind of destroyed, kind of relinquished the responsibility of our mind slash memory and something like that. So effectively what happened, because now we document, we kind of lost track of how to actually process. And this feels like they're being so fucking detailed because genuinely, a lot of people don't really process this kind of stuff. I don't know if they don't notice. I don't know if they're just focused on what they're doing. I don't know. But ultimately, like the ability to be able to like see what's going on, reflect on it, and take a step forward based on that is generally the only thing human beings should find worthy of spending time on. Because any job you do, you could always do it differently. And that sense of reflection is literally the only job you should be doing. I literally just anywhere you put anyone. I became an engineer 3 years ago. I literally, at 36 years old, I decided to study software engineering, and now I program websites and all that good stuff. And I'm building a project on my own, and I have like UI UX designers working with me and all that shit. So it's just like super. Once you make a decision, you make a decision, but really making that decision. So a business analyst is there because other people were not able to make a decision, or just couldn't give a fuck, or just basically don't have the capability to do it. So you're the business analyst, bro. Be one. Be a badass. Oh, business analyst, badass. I think I'm gonna start using that. So from now on, anytime I want to say business analyst, I'm just gonna say badass. Yeah, someone's gonna like it. So who are you? What's your career? Well, I'm a badass. Right? Business analysis literally means I could destructure, dissect anything you give me. Any concept, any any structure, anything you give me. Because practically that's what we do. Now, 3.1.3 inputs. Remember, we're following this chart, right? So now we're discussing the inputs in the plan business analysis approach, right? Like 3.1 plan business analysis approach. What's the purpose? What's the description? Inputs. And we go deeper into it. There's the needs and all the good stuff. Oh, only needs. Needs. The business analysis approach is shaped by the problem or opportunity faced by the organization. It is necessary to consider what is known about the need at the time of planning, while acknowledging what that understanding evolves through business analysis activities. Yeah. Should I read it again? It is necessary to consider what is known about the need. Okay, so basically, like assessing what is known about why have to do what we're doing, while acknowledging that the understanding evolves around throughout business analysis activities. Okay, So there's a figure here. Great. Guidelines and tools, business analysis, performance assessment, business policies, expert judgment, methodologies and frameworks, stakeholder engagement and approach. So these are all sources, guidelines and tools. The input is the needs, and then we plan the business analysis approach, and the output should be the business analysis approach itself, not the planning. The planning is what we're doing right now, but the approach, basically, a documented structure of how we're going to be doing things, and that basically like. So tasks using this output are basically like plan the stakeholder engagement, plan business analysis governance, plan business analysis information management, identify business analysis performance improvements. Four, nice. Prepare for elicitation, conduct elicitation, communicate business analysis information, manage stakeholder collaboration, analyze current state, define change strategy, and assess risks. So 3, 4, 6 here, I think because it's reflecting on here, the 3.1 is the plan business analysis approach. But then when we get to the 4, oh, I think we're here in the 4th chapter, elicitation and collaboration. So all of these basically, the planning the business analysis approach is basically input, plan business analysis approach, and output. And part of these tasks are going to be explained to us in different chapters. So like this is chapter 4.1, 4.2, and then chapter 6, how to analyze current state, how to define change strategy, like how are we going to change this, how we're going to define the strategy of change, and how to assess the risks. How these are in different chapters. But basically, they're kind of pointing out the overall tasks using this output. Right now, we're only going to be active with like 4 of them, like stakeholder engagement, business analysis, governance, plan business analysis and information management, and identify business analysis performance improvements. We're still at the basic approach of our business analysis structure, or at the very least, our business analysis approach, because we're still in the planning stage based on every fucking choice, based on every like unique case. Right now, we're still at the planning stage of that case. We're still understanding what the case is about. 3.1.4 elements. Remember, we had just kind of like a brief description here, the purpose, the description, the inputs that are kind of like the inputs that have to go into the planning, and the approach right now. The elements, and the elements of this planning stage is basically there's a planning approach, there's a formality and level of detail of business analysis deliverables, because we have to kind of understand what we're doing and what we're going to show for it, right? And then formality and level of detail of business analysis deliverable. Why did they say that again? That's actually the same, right? 3.1.2, formality and level of detail. Uh, what's different? Oh, this is a figure basically, and this is not a figure. So all of these that we're going to read right now are basically explained in a figure. So let's read them. So the planning approach, there are values planning methods used across perspectives. Yay, there are a lot of them. Industries and enterprises, many planning methods fit somewhere along the continuum between predictive and adaptive approaches. Predictive approaches focus on minimizing upfront uncertainty and ensuring that the solution is defined before implementation begins in order to maximize control. I'm gonna highlight this baby. All right, delete. All right. So predictive approaches and there's adaptive approaches. So predictive approaches focuses on minimizing this kind of stuff and upfront uncertainty. Adaptive approaches is basically more focus on rapid delivery of business value in short iterations. So adaptive approaches seem like to be more, let's test if this works or not, and then we basically like we move forward. If it's a good test, we move in the same direction. If it's a bad test, or if it's not a good, it's not about the test itself, but it seems like if it's a good approach, which is represented by the outcome of the test, then we basically decide if we're continuing in the same direction, but we kind of like skew a bit and like kind of like iterates left and right until we finally pick a path that works. And if it's not, we have to pick a different path. So these are adaptive approaches. Predictive approaches focus on minimizing upfront uncertainty and ensuring that the solution is defined before implementation begins in order to maximize control and minimize risk. So predictive approaches has has us assuming what the solution could look like beforehand in order for us to basically do a lot more research in order for the steps we take forward to weigh differently. These approaches are often preferred in situations where requirements can effectively be defined ahead of implementation. So basically, if it's just a case study that already exists and it's not completely new, so we know what we're dealing with, maybe that could allow us to kind of like work on a certain solution. Some case studies are simple, like hospitality industry requiring something. So basically, like a software or something like this. There are many things that you can research in order for you to figure out. When engaging stakeholders present significant challenges. The risk of an incorrect implementation is unacceptably high, or when engaging stakeholders present significant challenges. So basically, there are some stages where you can actually like jump into it and do something, which are adaptive approaches, but there are some approaches where you kind of have to do a lot more research instead of kind of like try things out and see how it goes. Different approaches may be used within the same initiative. Among other factors, the business analyst may consider the organization's standards, tolerance for uncertainty. And so you have to kind of understand the culture you're working with and the protocols they're willing to work. Like some organizations can afford a lot more risk or are willing to have a more risk-prone strategy than other organizations because maybe like, I'd rather spend 6 months on this and see if it fails or not, while others would be like, no, we can take 2 years and then it'll be fun. Regardless of the approach, planning is an essential task to ensure value is delivered to an enterprise. Planning typically occurs more than once on a given initiative as plans are updated to address changing business conditions and newly raised issues. The business analysis approach should describe how plans will be altered if changes are required. Remember, we're still only planning what we're going to be doing. No, we're only planning how we're going to be doing things. Yeah. When defining a business analysis approach, consider the level of formality that is appropriate for approaching and planning the initiative. Here, formality is because you're dealing with people. Predictive approaches typically call for formal documentation and representations. Business analysis information may be captured. So anything predictive requires a solid, like, this is how we're going to do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because you're researching a lot more. So you write documents for it. Business analysis information may be captured in a formal document or set of representations following standardized templates. Information is captured at various levels of detail. The specific content and format of business analysis information can vary depending on the organizational methodologies, processes, and templates used. I love it how in every fucking paragraph they literally include, yeah, but all of these are subject to fucking change because we're really just relying on the fact that you have a brain that's able to interact with things as they actually move or gets to make a decision and kind of like structured approach. Adaptive approaches favor defining requirements and designs through team interaction and gathering feedback and working solution and on a working solution. So yeah, gathering feedback requires actually like actionable things to get feedback from. Mandatory requirements for presentation are often limited to prioritized requirements list. Additional business analysis documentation may be created at the discretion of the team and generally consists of models developed to enhance the team's understanding of a specific problem. Formal documentation is often produced after the solution is implemented to facilitate knowledge transfer. It's a lot of words, man. I lost myself halfway. I'm gonna read it again. Why the fuck not? Because the plan is not to come back to this book unless I know what I'm looking for, right? Like we're reading this book once, so we actually create reference points and to have the gist of what we're going to be doing. Mandatory requirements representations are often limited to a prioritized requirements list. Prioritized requirements lists are probably like based on past use cases or basically just what the fucking people would actually like. I'm gonna change the color. Here we go. Keep this the way it is. Die. All right. So prioritized requirements list, the way I see it, is basically something that we cannot skew from. So like I remember right now, like in my chemistry My chemistry teacher was teaching us how to do tests in chemistry, and she mentioned something like a controlled experiment. So a controlled experiment means there's only one variable that changes. One thing changes, and the idea is we actually measure that change amount, and everything is consistent except for that one thing, and we do that in order for us to measure change. So basically, yeah. Additional business analysis documentation may be created at the discretion of the team. It generally consists of models developed to enhance the team's understanding of the specific problem. Formal documentation is often produced after the solution is implemented to facilitate knowledge transfer. So basically, with this one, there's a lot less documentation, unless we're reading documentation, but you have to create it after you're done, basically. Okay, so this is what we did in order for you guys, because like you're the expert, right? So you can actually do things differently, but the other people probably won't be able. Other considerations that might affect the approach include, look at that. Other considerations that might affect include. So you're considering other things that can include. The change is complex and high risk, of course. Because if a company wants to shift from finance to fucking like sales, right? To a logistics company, change, big change. Organization is in or interacts with heavily regulated industries. Imagine there are industries like the health industry, there are industries like the finance industry, or the stock market industry, or something like this. There are a lot of things to consider because like you can't just do anything. You have to kind of like see what you're getting into. Contracts or agreements necessitate formality. All right, so like basically maybe you're messing with different contracts or something like this. I don't know. Stakeholders are geographically distributed. Logistics for you, because to find the stakeholders, you kind of have to like do different things and go to different places. So like maybe you structure information in a way where you go see the stakeholders temporarily, but get enough information. Or maybe most of the meetings are online. I don't know. Resources are outsourced, which means you don't have full control of the resources because they're not being handled in-house. They're handled by like outsourcing. Staff turnover is high or team members may be inexperienced. So basically, the people you're going to be working with, that's a consideration as well. Requirements must be formally signed off. That means management is holding you by the balls. That's a metaphorical thing. Is it metaphorical or figurative? No, it's a metaphor because like holding by the balls when a guy's held. The reason I'm explaining it is because there could be women that enjoy watching this. I have no idea. But being held by the balls hurts and kind of limits your movement. So like, just imagine something that limits your movement, and that could work. It's not a man thing. It's just that we have balls and we understand that feeling. Business analysis information must be maintained long term or handed over to use on future initiatives. That kind of like makes sense. Handed over for use on future initiatives, and like whatever you do, you have to kind of give the people. They have to understand what you did so that you can probably use it. And this is an actual figure. Approach, predictive and adaptive approaches. Oh, solution definition, defined before implementation to maximize control and minimize risk because we're predicting it. Adaptive, defined in iterations to arrive at the best solution or improve an existing solution. So basically, like adaptive is like you don't have to like again like you don't have to plan way far ahead. You kind of like define something, you try to implement, and then from there you kind of come up with a new thing. Level of formality. For predictiveness, for the predictive approach, formal information is captured in standardized templates. Simply because you're actually like predicting something into the future. So you need something that's kind of like standardized. The adaptive is informal, but information gathered through team interaction and feedback. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to like write the documentation for people to understand. Activities required from the predictive perspective. Activities required to complete deliverables are identified first and then divided into tasks. Makes sense. Whilst adaptive, activities are divided into iterations and deliverables first, and then associated tasks are identified. You basically just split activities to see what kind of tasks might come out of them. I like the adaptive approach, man. It's super sexy. Timing. Tasks are performed in specific phases. Adaptive tasks are performed iteratively, right? Because predictive you plan, so this phase we're going to be doing these tasks, but adaptive you kind of like, you know, Now this task could work better if we do it. Oh, we need this task now because this is the output that we have that fits there. Or, like you never know. Business analysis activities. 3.1.3. A business analysis approach provides a description of the types of activities that the business analyst will perform. Frequently, the organization's adopted methodologies influence the activities that are selected. Integrating business analysis activities in the business analysis approach includes identifying the activities required to complete each deliverable and then breaking each activity to tasks. Ugh, details. Who doesn't love details? Let's nerd out, guys. Dividing the work into iterations, identifying the deliverables for each iteration, and then identifying the associated activities and tasks. Or or using a previous similar initiative as an outline and applying the detailed tasks and activities unique to the current initiative. So basically, like you either create something new and pre-plan it, or you kind of like split the work and you kind of like figure out what's going to happen. Just one is predictive, one is adaptive. And one you don't have to predict and you don't adapt. You just take something that worked before, a similar initiative that worked before, as an outline to apply the detailed tasks. So basically, it takes, I think the third one is almost always what we do. So we find the closest thing to it, and then from there we start, because building something from scratch really like just allows your mind to just expand to everything that could be a possibility, which is valid, but hey, not everyone wants to start from all scratch. Just change a bit of pieces of code in order for you to get the result. Business analysts determine when the business analysis tasks need to be performed and if the level of business analysis effort will need to vary over time. This type of planning includes determining whether the business analysis tasks performed with the other knowledge areas will be performed primary in specific phases or iteratively over the course of the initiative. The timing of business analysis activities can also be affected by the availability of resources, priorities, and urgency of the initiative, other concurrent initiatives, or constraints such as contract terms or regulatory deadlines. So basically, this piece of this work, timing of business analysis work, is specifically how you kind of like plan the time. And yay, complexity and risk. The complexity and size of the change and the overall risk of the effort to the organization are considered when determining the business analysis approach as complexity and risk increase or decrease. The nature and scope of business analysis work can be altered and reflected in the approach. Let's read it again. The complexity and size of the change and overall risk of the effort to the organization are considered when determining the business analysis approach. Why am I tripping on this one? It's just because it uses a lot of words. They're just saying that, like, you have to consider complexity and risk when you're determining the approach. And as complexity and risk increase or decrease, the nature of the scope of business analysis work can be altered and reflected in the approach. Why do I feel like this was useless? Maybe I just already kind of like innately look at these things. I don't know. It's just like probably fun for me to actually like reflect on things that I feel like are, oh, okay, I got it, but like, do you really get it? The approach may be, I don't know, like, this is easy to understand, but when it comes time to implementation, I think this is one of the things that we might forget because we might be driven emotionally, maybe, or we might be excited to start implementing something. So effectively, what we're doing is we kind of like we might put ourselves in a position that kind of like invites a bit more failure or a bit more inefficient approach. So the approach may also be altered based on the number of stakeholders or business analysis resources involved in the initiative. As the number of stakeholders increases, the approach may be adjusted to include additional process steps or better manage the business analysis work. That's literally just saying, hey guys, keep your eyes wide open. You never know when you might have to change something, and good luck. I believe in you. Other factors that can impact complexity include size of the change, number of business areas or systems affected, geographic and cultural considerations, technological complexities, and any risks that could impede the business analysis effort. Factors that can impact the risk level of business analysis effort include Experience level of business analyst, naturally. Extent of domain knowledge held by business analysts, naturally. Level of level of experience stakeholders have in communicating their needs. Yeah, that's on the business analyst because like if stakeholders can't communicate their needs, then you need to kind of extract information from them. Stakeholder attitudes about the change in business analysis in general. Most stakeholders don't want change. They're perfectly content. They just want more money. Amount of time allocated by stakeholders to the business analysis activities. Yep. Saya. Any pre-selected framework, methodology, tools, and or techniques. If we already have like a pre-selected here, this I think is one of the most important in this because most of the time companies actually have preset ways to do things, and that's probably one of the bigger things that we need to change. Imposed by organizational policies and practices, and ultimately cultural norms. Sometimes, like the solution does not really fit how the company does things, so we either alter the solution or yeah, we can't change the culture of a company unless we are able to convince them that that's the culture that's actually affecting this. Who knows? Show me what you got. So the business analysis approach is reviewed and agreed upon by the key stakeholders naturally. In some organizations, the business analysis process may be more structured and requires key stakeholders to sign off on the approach to ensure all business analysis activities have been identified, estimates are realistic, and the proposed roles or responsibilities are correct. I think that should be always the case because the last thing you want is somebody going like, yes, yes, sure, and then after a couple of months they go like, that's not what we agreed on. So I think paperwork between you and stakeholders is very much necessary. Any issues raised by stakeholders when reviewing the approach are documented by the business analyst and resolutions are sought, and then that documentation needs to be signed by the fucking stakeholders. Stakeholders also play a role in reviewing and accepting changes to the approach as alterations are made to accommodate changing conditions across the initiative. Amazing. I just thought we could also record sessions with stakeholders in order for us to actually like have a different side of the analysis. Maybe I'd imagine the noobs, if you're working as a business analyst and you have like a team of X amount of people, if you have somebody that's kind of like new, what you want them to do is gather experience through information, but you don't want to really put them on the forefront. So you give them basically like assessment of, hey, yeah, you basically give them videos of you guys interacting with stakeholders, which actually builds on their experience and allows them to give you like different sides of the analysis, maybe or something. I don't know. That could be fun. So guidelines and tools. Woohoo! Business analysis performance assessment. Naturally. Business policies. Yes. Expert judgment. Hire somebody or talk to somebody that knows this shit. Methodologies and frameworks. We discussed this, and I'm gonna read them. Don't worry about it. But we discussed this in the introduction chapter right here. Again, if somebody wants this book, man, just let me know. I'll fucking send it to you, man. I'll email you this book. The BABOK Guide version 3. Woohoo! Methodologies and frameworks, stakeholder engagement approach. So business analysis performance assessment provides results of previous assessments that should be reviewed and incorporated into all planning approaches. Great. Business policies define the limits which the decisions must be made. They may be described by regulations, contracts, agreements, deals, warranties, certifications, and other legal obligations. These policies can influence the business analysis approach. Expert judgment used to determine the optimal business analysis approach. Expertise may be provided from a wide range of sources, including stakeholders on the initiative, organizational centers of excellence, consultants, associations. Fuck off. Yeah, fuck off. Methodologies and frameworks shape and the approach that will be used by providing methods, techniques, procedures. Sorry, man. The expert judgment, I told him to fuck off because, like, expert judgment is hired of somebody who knows this shit. And if you're analyzing something, for example, in accounting, then you hire somebody who's familiar with accounting, right? An expert in accounting. You decide that on the. You don't have to tell me initiate organizational centers of excellence, consultants or associations or industry groups. Like, we'll figure it out, man. Have some faith. What the fuck? Stakeholder engagement approach. Understanding the stakeholders and their concerns and interests may influence decisions made when determining the business analysis approach. We have to understand that. That stakeholders and their concerns are going to influence decisions made when determining the business analysis approach. They're the ones that we always have to be like, making sure they're cool with what we're doing. Anyways, techniques. Brainstorming, used to identify possible business analysis activities, techniques, risks, and other relevant items to help build the business analysis approach. I know, bro. Really, like, we probably understand what brainstorming means. But hey, they mentioned it, and we promised each other that we're going to read the whole book, didn't we? You won't have to read it because I'm reading it out loud and I'm thinking out loud. So all you have to do is think with me and pause the video and be like, oh, this, oh, maybe this, and just add different ways that you would do things and create that mental mind map so that when the time comes and you're actually approaching a case, pop, 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 everything's connected. Business cases used to understand whether elements of the problem or opportunity are especially time sensitive, high value, or whether there is a particular uncertainty around elements of the possible need or solution. Possible business cases. Uh, okay, so let me just explain it for the sake of like explaining it. Business cases are basically cases that happened in businesses and how they were handled. So that's perfect for your research because it really helps. I don't want to say narrow down, but it kind of helps not have your mind kind of like wander into different things that could potentially basically just waste your time. So it kind of gives you like this beautiful outline, but I don't want to use the term outline because effectively that's what you play with, right? Just kind of like creates a good mental map of the things that you should probably prioritize in your research, specifically because previous cases of this kind, whatever it is you're doing, have existed in different kind of like forms. So that's how you learn. Document analysis used to review existing organizational assets that might assist in planning the approach. Okay, so document analysis is basically seeing whatever the organization has as documentation. Uh, it helps you understand culture, it helps you understand the formalities required, and hence helps you understand the policies, it helps you understand how they do things in order for you to action. Estimation used to determine, oh shit, my earpiece is like running out of battery. Used to determine how long, estimation used to determine how long it takes to perform business analysis activities. Imagine that estimation is also explained here. Financial analysis used to assess how different approaches and the supported delivery options affect the value delivered. Financial analysis basically right now is for us to be able to understand how much it would cost for us to get value out of it. Because like if it costs a couple of $1 million for us to kind of like save them 500,000, that probably is a bad investment. Unless we're saving them 500,000 for the next 5, 6, 10 years, then that would be a better investment, right? Functional decomposition used to break down complex business analysis processes and approaches into more feasible components. So decomposition is the key word here because you take something that works, but what you're doing is you're splitting it into smaller things that work in order for the whole thing to work. It's beautiful because like for us, we call it code refactoring maybe, or just like destructuring our functions when it comes to programming. And ultimately, you take something that you take a process and you break it into smaller things. So like basically instead of like from A to Z, it's from A to B to C to D, like all the steps and what you need to do in order to reach it. Interviews. Should I explain what an interview is? It's used to help build the plan with an individual or small group. Item tracking used to track any issues raised during planning activities. It's a metric, right? Like you actually go like, we talked about this and let's see how it goes. So you kind of create a chart for it to see how the research is going or how the procedure is going or how the buildup is going or how our assessment or analysis of it is going, whatever it is. Can also track risk-related items raised during discussions when building the approach. Nice. So something that we're worrying about that could be risky, we kind of can track it. Lessons learned used to identify, oh, did they go? No, 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 one is still active. All right. Process modeling used to define the process modeling. Oh, lessons learned. It's a documentation of the lessons learned. Used to identify an enterprise's previous experience, successes and challenges with planning business analysis approach. So like if they actually have this documentation, then badass man. Get it? Process modeling, used to define and document the business analysis approach. Reviews, used to validate the selected business analysis approach with stakeholders. Risk analysis and management, used to assess risk in order to select the proper business analysis approach. Scope modeling, used to determine the boundaries of the solution as an input to planning and estimating. So here, business case studies that I mentioned here help a lot in kind of like modeling the scope, because it kind of like allows us, because there's a context of what we're trying to do, and we use that context in order to find like the business cases that have happened before that we could actually interact with or learn from. And that kind of helps us kind of like model certain like the parameters. Ah, that's a good word. The parameters of how we're approaching things. Survey or questionnaire used to identify possible business analysis activities, techniques, risks, and other relevant items to help build the business analysis approach. Workshops used to help build the plan and team setting. So this is all about us, babies. All right, so I'm going to finish at stakeholder engagement. 3.1.7 stakeholders, domain subject matter expert, because you have to get stakeholders that know what the fuck they're doing, can be a source of risk when their involvement is required and availability is lacking. It's a risk if we don't have them, basically. The approach taken may depend on availability and level of involvement with the initiative. Project manager determines that the approach is realistic for the overall schedule and timelines. So these are basically what kind of people we should be looking for in order to work with us. Regulator may be needed to provide approval for aspects of a business. Regulators normally are basically like the lawyers that work with like specific fields. Like again, like I'm gonna mention medicine and finance because they're heavily regulated. And organization, like if you're working with a drug company, for example, you need people that understand what the laws are, that have been interacting with the laws every single day, because the laws might change, and then your entire analysis model could go to fucking shit simply because some new thing came about and you didn't plan for it. Sponsor can provide the needs and objectives of the approach and ensures the organizational policies are followed. The selected approach may depend on availability and involvement with the initiative. So basically, a sponsor is the person who goes clapping to you. Hey, you're the guy, or you're the girl, you're the person, or you're the woman, whatever. Outputs. Business analysis approach identifies the business analysis approach, the badass approach, and activities that will be no. The business analyst is badass. Business analysis is business analysis. Identifies the business analysis approach and activities that will be performed across the initiative, including who will perform the activities. Get it? So in the business analysis approach, when it comes to outputs, like you kind of like are you here? They're just telling you that you're going to have to be delegating. Timing and sequence of the work, the deliverables that will be produced, and the business analysis techniques that may be utilized. The remaining outputs of the business analysis planning and monitoring knowledge area may be integrated into the overall approach to be independent based upon methodology, organization, and perspective. I read this way too fast. I'm going to read it again. The remaining outputs of the business analysis planning and monitoring knowledge area may be integrated into an overall approach to be independent based upon methodology, organization, and perspective. So here, when it comes to the activities that will be performed across an initiative, including who will perform the activities, the timing and sequences of the work, and the deliverables that will be produced, and the business analysis techniques that may be utilized. These are basically what they're telling us. They're like, no, this is from us. The remaining outputs, which they don't fucking know, of the business analysis planning and monitoring knowledge area may be integrated into an overall approach. These you kind of have to focus on, but other stuff might be needed and you don't know because it's case on case. But you can integrate them as an overall approach. As in all of us, when we sit together, we discuss them and we kind of like tick the bars or something like this. But the truth is, we could also like create a small segment where you hire a specific person or a team in order for them to handle it. Because ultimately, like you're the one who's weighing everything and you're deciding how things could be done. So even the timing and sequencing of the work could be just done by one person without like the rest agreeing or something. And the deliverables could be delegated directly, or it could be like discussed who would want to do this and who would not want to do this. And yeah, here we are. We reached 3.2, which is plan stakeholder engagement and how we plan it. Notice it's the same pattern, right? What's the purpose of this? What's the description? What are the inputs? And there's a chart and there are the elements of it. And as we go down, I am sure there are guidelines, tools, techniques, and we end with stakeholders and then outputs. What are our expectations? So See you next episode, babies. Bye. Oh, this is how my face has been looking for the past 15 minutes. All right.